that you've had an opportunity to meet Kiara. Is she here? Kiara is a new member to the CGL team. I think you all have met Phil in the past, and she has jumped on board in the last several months, and she is supplementing the construction review and work that is happening there, among other things. A new aspect of their work that has been happening but is now coming more so to the county is transition team efforts. And so they have, and I'll let Steve talk a little bit about that if he wants to, but they have two additional employees who are meeting with all of our end users on a regular basis, and all of our end users have established transition teams within their departments, and their job is to figure out how we move from points A, B, C, D, and E to point Z in the fall of '22. And so they are looking at, everything from furniture to signage on doors and walls to how we fit people within the new facility, looking at, issues with respect to reducing the amount of paper that is used in a new facility, looking at the files that we have in our old facility. A good example would be there are a host of transcripts and the like housed in Frank Murphy Hall of Justice now, and you'll find those things under benches in courtrooms, behind the judge's stand, the judge's bench, and anywhere in between. And so we're looking at how we reduce some of that paper, but also what do we do with the stuff that we already have. And so we had an extensive meeting yesterday with those transition team members to present kind of a 30,000-foot overview of that process, but they are working very, very hard with all of our end users at how we make the transition as smooth as possible. And so I think that probably maybe in the second quarter or third quarter perhaps of this year, it will make sense to bring, in addition to Steve and Phil and Kiara to the table, but you hear directly probably from those transition team members to give you an idea of what we can expect, not just on the construction side, but how we actually move our bodies into that facility. So I think you'll find that to be helpful. And once that process goes a little bit further, that's something that we'd like to schedule for you as well. We are still looking to receive formal invoices from the developer with respect to some of the environmental costs that we've been discussing over the last couple of months. The information that we have received so far have been kind of informal projections based on what the developer and the remediation teams have been finding. We have been in contact with them as recently as I think this morning, Steve, regarding getting those formal invoices so that they can begin to present themselves on the budget sheets that we will be providing you with. And so there's no new status update in terms of formalizing what those invoices are, but I know it's a topic that you have been interested in, so I just wanted to let you know that we are continuing our conversations with them in that regard. There have been some developments with respect to bid package 4, which we've been saying for quite a while is the largest bid package where we expect to get the most amount of county inclusion and where the rubber really meets the road in terms of building this facility. Tori will, in her update, will kind of give you an overview of kind of where we are with that, but that process continues as well. Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the actual construction work that's happened since November, since we last had a chance to meet?
Sure. The only thing I would elaborate on your transition is that we have one of the big things that we're trying to coordinate with all the end users is that now these people have been operating as a separate entity, and we're bringing them all to one complex. So there's a lot of coordination between the transition teams to come up with the right operation. So operations and how they move within these facilities is going to be somewhat different than they operate now, and they have to come up with those operational procedures. So that's the only thing I would elaborate on what you said. Construction-wise, as James said, if you drive by the site, pretty much nothing's hidden anymore. They're out of the ground. So you can see what's going on. Right now, out of the ground, we talked last time, the steel that was going up is the courthouse. And they have actually gotten up to the top floor. They still have to go to the roof level. And the reason they're not there is they've got some mechanical coordination issues with the structural steel that they have to work out before they go up that high. It may have to modify some steel to make that mechanical stuff work. They are going to proceed with the office building in the meantime, so you'll start seeing that structure go up as well. And the most visible and obvious thing is the jail. The ADF is going up. That's an all precast structure, and it's very visible from 75 and certainly Chrysler Drive. If you drive by, you'll see that. I don't know if anybody's gone by and seen it. It's kind of a nice looking precast, I think, a little scalloped look. That's going up in 4 quadrants. There's a crane right now on a crane pad that's building the first quadrant. Once that's complete, they have to move the crane to be in line for the second quadrant, and that entails taking the pad that's underneath it and moving it so it can be underneath the crane after they move it. The pad is basically big, huge timbers that they place to give that crane a nice, flat, stable surface.
Is that, are they doing it in modules?
The cells?
No, the building, you're saying quadrants,
Well, it's
precast.
Cast, right?
it's precast, but it's in, they've got it set up so they're building it in 4 different quadrants. The crane has to sit there and take the precast and put it in place. It can't reach the whole building. So they're sitting there now, and that crane can build that first quarter of the building up to the roof. And then they have to move that crane and build the second quadrant. It'll take 4 quadrants.
Just a question too, Steve, when you said they may have to reinforce some of the steel, I think you said they, as far as going up beyond the top floor, when they go to the roof level, what was the reasoning behind it? Did they underestimate the strength of what they put in place? Is there?
It's not so much reinforcing, it's more maneuvering. They want to make sure that we get the ductwork up where that air handling unit's going to sit.
Okay,
So they're just trying to finalize all that to make sure that they don't have a beam in the way of where a duct wants to go.
okay, all right,
But it has nothing to do with the strength of the structure. It's more
Okay.
location.
okay. So, all right, continue if you have anything else.
Nothing else other than there's still some small bit of foundation work still going on in the office area. And the CUP should start its construction within the month.
You mentioned about the exterior having sort of like waves in it. Is that what you would see from 75? Because when I looked over that way, when we were coming from the funeral of the former treasurer, I looked over that way and I saw it, and it was a interesting look on the side, and I wasn't sure if that was the jail or not. I thought, but that is the exterior. That now, where would they? Are they going to have cuts in that to put windows or anything in? Is that
There are some windows that are down low. There's no
Lower,
windows up
okay.
high. There's
Okay.
windows around the rec yards
okay?
that you'll see. But yeah, the cutouts are all in place.
Okay. So, has the weather hampered in any way, or is it pretty much moving on schedule? And do we have the completion date, still expectations that it's going to be done was it early 22?
Fall.
Fall of 22. Okay,
We're still on schedule.
okay,
And of course, the weather does affect
sure,
on a daily, on some days when it's inclement. But all of those weather days, unless it's something totally bizarre or harsh, should be built into the schedule.
okay.
They expect Michigan winter, so.
Victoria, did you want to bring us up to date on what you're working on, that bid package and that?
Yes, thank you, Victoria Edwards. Specifically, we are still in the meat of bid package 4. just to kind of let you know, all the hardscapes and landscapes, those bids have been put on hold for the moment. There have been a few architectural tweaks they want to do, not to mention our wonderful weather. So they're not putting those bids yet out. So those are being probably pushed off about a month or so. We are also in the post-bid season for a lot of the smaller packages where they're bringing in folks who did respond. Those companies have a chance to, one, go over their numbers, ask questions if there isn't anything clear. Barton Mallow and the construction team and the architectural team, if there's any questions they need to ask back and forth, that's happening in the post-bid meetings. We've had quite a few. Next week, I have several of them. I attend the majority of those. Also, during the post bids, part of what they go over is looking at their plan for workforce. Do they understand the commitment to workforce? How are they getting it? Do they understand the commitment of county inclusion for those businesses? Sometimes at that point, there'll also be questions from the vendors that say, hey, we have several folks, do you have any more? So it's an opportunity at that point to, again, share more information, a lot of clarification. They have not awarded anything yet, and it is a long and lengthy process. So that's why I've always said bid package 4, it sounds like it's easy, just one package, but it really is divided up into these chapters, and then they literally go through every single nuance. There are some areas within a few of the bids, particularly in building specialties and possibly in some of the interior, where they did not get a complete bid, where people only bid portions of it. So what they're going to do is look at that and probably put that one back out as well to see if they can look at it differently or have somebody else look at it. So it is literally an ongoing process. Right now, it's kind of minutia. I am hoping that we will have some more information by the time our next meeting, ramping up after the holiday, as well as you will shortly receive, we just got the numbers for January, and I would like to look at those, and then I'll send those on, hopefully by today or tomorrow to you for the workforce numbers. So we have our update. Unfortunately, the reporting date is usually the day before or the day of this meeting, the way it goes. So I want to be able to look at it, put a little cover sheet on it, and send that on to you. So January is coming to you.
Okay, great.
All right.
One of the things I wanted to add, which is, I think, been extremely productive, Daryl Jones, who is taking the lead for work in our buildings department right now, has corralled many of the tradespeople who work for the county, and they've been working along with CGL and Steve Ohm and really combing through all of the drawings and the like and giving the architect and the developer suggestions on minor changes here or there that they believe will make the jail, from a maintenance perspective, more efficient and effective. And so we have compiled a list of that information. We've submitted it to HOK, and we are in the process of discussing with them and getting responses to the things that we've submitted. And so I just wanted to let you know that that has been a positive thing, working with our tradespeople and getting their input on how this facility ought to be designed from a very practical level. And so that's where we're really kind of drilling down from the larger drawings that we have, really looking at, what's going into the individual cells, how are the people who are going to be maintaining this facility, how do they feel about it? And so that's been productive.
Good, good. Any commissioners have questions right at this point? Commissioner Varga, or McCormick, I think you had your hand up
Thank you,
first.
Mr. Chair. As far as your inclusion efforts, do you have any reports or numbers, what that looks like, or your target goals and?
That's
Things like that.
actually the update that I'm talking about that you should have later on today. We had a
later
report the
on.
last time. We
Okay.
just received the new numbers for the inclusion, which is the workforce number, how many Wayne County residents, how many businesses. So that information we're getting quarterly, we just received that, so that's
Be in
coming
that
for you. Exactly. And that's the one that we do send to Chair Anderson, and that is disseminated down every time we report, so we have those.
How about apprenticeships? Are there any efforts included in that to have
apprentice on the program.
Right.
Part of the inclusion efforts, there is a boot camp that is an apprenticeship through Barton Mallow and through the unions with the contractors on site, where they're actually going through part of the union apprenticeship program, and they have commitments where they're on the job. So that is part of it. I know right now a lot of the unions are also trying to expand their numbers and get more of them, but that is part of the count and part of what will be on site.
So in order to be a apprentice, they first have to go through,
They have to go through yes, in the education component, whether they go through one of the trade schools, such as Randolph, there's always a pre-education. There is a pre-math if you're not understanding. You've got several courses that you have to do. They have different cohorts. So you have to go through the first 4 steps. It's understanding cutting, measuring, all of that piece first.
okay.
And you have to test, you have to pass, and you get to a certain point, which lets them know you qualify and understand the basics. Then you have the actual hands-on portion. You can't just jump in, even if it's something you've been doing since you were knee-high with your dad, your uncle, whoever. You still have to go through the accredited program and the process. And also, too, what I have learned with that, a lot of it is not just the skill set, but there's a lot of safety measures. When you're so many feet off the ground, do you understand you have to tie off? How do you tie off correctly? So those are a lot of different things that you have to learn and understand. So they have to go through that portion first. Then they get the actual hands-on apprenticeship. And then depending on the trade, you have a long period of hours. But part of this project, there is a commitment because what they're trying to do is take people from apprenticeship to journeymen at the end of the program.
And so do we have the numbers for that commitment?
That is included in the
that
workforce.
report? Or,
That is included in the workforce. Now, it sounds like you're asking something different than numbers. So if you're interested in actually the program itself,
the program and how it translates to jobs, or apprenticeship jobs.
okay.
That's what I'm referring to.
We'll probably do an offline because there's different levels. Because
Okay.
you already have within the skilled trade unions, they have their apprenticeship programs too, not just this one building and structure. So we have certain ones that are going to be coming on, the commitment to come on to this project.
That's what I'm referring to, this project.
Yes, so we have that.
Okay.
But also, no, that's only a piece of the whole. That's why I said it's probably a bigger than just this piece. So if the union starts a cohort and they have 50 in this group, you might see 5 or 6 from each skilled trade that are going to be on this project, but also understand that
they
whole
may
class is
go
going,
to another.
that's why I said it's probably more than what you're just speaking of, and we can definitely do it offline. I can give you that information. But a lot of times, it's not just this one little group in this moment, but it's tied to a bigger program as well, if that is helpful.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to make a note of that.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, some of these things is things that had been covered before, but I appreciate Victoria will bring you up to speed on all of that stuff as far as the opportunities for apprenticeships, because there was a lot of things built into the agreement. And thank you. Commissioner Varga and then Commissioner Clark Coleman.
How is the search for additional parking coming along?
Steadily. So, this will be kind of a larger conversation, I'm sure, that we will have in greater detail when you're presented with the amendment to the parking agreement. But, our process right now is we're, going through with all of our end users who are going to be on site, trying to determine exactly how many employees are we going to need there, need spaces for there, looking at our visitors, how many are coming at the end of the day, and then also looking at some of the various options for street parking and the like, so we can accommodate everyone. In addition, well, I won't get ahead of myself on that, but so we continue to look at parking. We continue to, evaluate exactly how many spaces that we need and whether we're need to look at additional avenues for accommodating our employees and visitors.
So do you feel good about being able to come up with all of the parking that we will be needing?
Yes.
Heard a yes, okay.
Yeah, I think that's good, but I would like to ask it, at what point will the determination be made of how many we're short and how many we're going to need? Because I think it was 1,600 parking spaces originally,
So
and then we lost some because of the cup.
yeah. So we're trying to get a hard number specifically, and we're reviewing our numbers with respect to all of our end users of exactly how many we need. And that's looking at various shift changes, that's looking at a number of issues. Also, in line with that point, as the commission is aware, you approved a feasibility study for a phase two, which will, depending on how that ends up shaking out, I don't want to get ahead of myself because you have not been presented with, and we don't have yet, the results of that study, but that will have an impact on our parking numbers as well. And so that's a larger discussion that's even bigger than just our CJC discussion. So we do continue to look at that on a regular basis, commissioners.
Great. Commissioner Clark Coleman.
Sure. Victoria, you talked about pre-education for these individuals in the skilled trades. Are you working with Wayne County Community College on a program that we just approved in my committee in public safety? They also are working on an educational program for skills.
Yes.
So will these,
Wayne County Community College, their program, they have a lot of that pre-education program in it. They're going to be a feeder to the apprenticeship programs because you're not reinventing the wheel. They're going to be taking care of that. So that is a feeder institution into the program.
yeah, that was my question, and I'm
Yes.
glad to hear that.
Yes.
All set. Commissioner Ware.
Phase two, that's when we're gonna deal with more parking, right?
So part of the report that you're going to be getting with respect to phase two will include a parking component. That's correct.
Thank you. And transportation, like shuttles,
Pardon me?
like transportation too, if the parking is somewhat a distance from the criminal justice complex.
So
We won't expect them to walk there, right? It'll be like something like DMC have.
So we've not had specific discussions centered around shuttles or that sort of thing at this point.
So write that down on your notes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank
And it is a concern that I've heard before as to whether or not the safety of the folks that are there, depending on what time they get out. And so it is an important issue. Yeah. Exactly. Any other commissioners' questions? If not, I've got a few. I think a couple of them are covered. Parking lot was one that I had a couple of questions on, but it's been addressed. Did Mr. Heath, did you and Mr. Abbo get to meet on the contingency fund balance, the controls and the reporting?
We've not met since our last meeting with this committee in November. And, I think we made some good progress in that initial meeting. You should know that there have not been any changes which have come up, which was the subject of that, but that is something that I think is probably on both of our to-do lists to get back together, but we have not had a follow-up meeting.
Mr. Abbo?
Through the chair, yes, it probably has more to do with, as James had indicated, on reacting quickly, and Felicia is very knowledgeable about this, changes that are made and how quickly they can be agreed to by the commission and commission staff.
That was the next question I had, Felicia. I know you were, and Mr. Heath were going to have a meeting to hammer out the specifics of the change order process, and has that happened yet? James, or that was, could I?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were talking to Commission Council.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You.
So,
I think
so we did have an initial meeting, Corporation Council.
That was like October,
That was
September, October.
sometime in the fall. That was, I don't know the exact date, for perhaps Mark or Felicia do know. And Mark is correct. The focus of that meeting was when change orders do arise, how do we have a process to deal with those things quickly so that we are within the confines of the agreement that we have with the developer. I think we had some positive initial conversations. That situation has not come into play yet, and perhaps I'll shoulder the blame for that. Perhaps we've been relying on the success that we've had and not having changes so far. But it is something that we want to continue with in terms of our conversations. And we were discussing, kind of 30,000-foot plans for how we can have a framework that works both works for the county and works for the developers as well to get the answers that they need. And so that's a conversation that we need to rekindle and get back together on.
I would ask that you try to make sure that happens for the next meeting, because it has been on the table. And of course, we want to have that change process in place before we start dealing with those change orders. And we're in a good place right now, like you said, but I'd like to see us focus on getting that done, because we've been tossing it around since last fall. And if I'd like to ask you to make sure we make another effort to get together.
Point well
to do
taken.
that. All right, thank you. And that's all I have right now. Any other questions by commissioners? Anything else you guys want to add? Okay. And I appreciate you all being here today. Yes, Mark?
Mr. Chairman, regarding the contingency budget, when we approved the jail itself, I think it was at the behest of the commission that we suggested that there be a contingency budget, because we saw things that may need to be addressed, things like allowances, adjustments to allowances, change orders that were a responsibility of the county, that there should be at least some cushion for. And so if they're going through bid package 4 now, I'm sure that after that process, the administration will probably be more aware of any contingency items that need to be addressed through that fund, which is approximately $17.5 million as.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Mark. And I think that this process that we described in terms of our end users and tradespeople going through and making some suggestions, our initial position will be that these are all things covered under the agreement. But we, as those discussions, work themselves out, if there are change orders, if there's those sort of things, that would probably be one of the first sources of that. And we are just kind of in the beginning stages of that process. So, this will become more of a relevant discussion, even more than it is today, as we go forward. I think you're right about that.
And the other thing that we saw missing from the budget for the initial jail was just simple things like actually physically moving the operations from 1 and 2 over to the new site. So, those things hadn't been addressed, so that's why we thought that, to put our arms around the entire project, including some of the minutia, the IT, would be something that we should add some money for, and that's what that money was initially intended for. So I don't think that the fact that it hasn't been identified, I think at this point isn't a problem, but as things come to our knowledge, that hopefully we can stay below that $17.5 million number, so that the cost of the jail doesn't grow.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, all those extraneous things and moving costs and getting people moved over, transition from the court as well as from the jails, the other jails, that could be a huge cost. And because I think there was some accounting already in the proposal for furniture and things like that, but I would expect that we could see some additional cost.
So there are various FF&E, budgets that are there, and that's part of what the CGL transition team and our end users are going over right now. Exactly
Okay.
what is it that we need in the new facility? What do we want to bring forward? What might need to be purchased, going forward, and then the best process for how we procure those sorts of items. And so it's an ongoing process. And one of the exciting things, frankly, is that we're not just focused on building the structure. We're turning our attention towards moving into a new structure, and that's progress from our standpoint. So.
Right. Okay. All right. Felicia, did you have anything you wanted to add or any question or anything to our attention? All right. If not, any other questions by commissioners? I'll go ahead and move the agenda. Madam Clerk?
E, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I haven't received anything. Does anyone want to bring? Okay. Doesn't look like there is any. Next.
Public comments.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment, ask a question of the committee? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I'll move on.
Adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
It's been moved and supported. Meeting's adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
No, but